Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy English Spark. I'm thrilled you're here today because we're about to embark on a beautiful story adventure that will supercharge your English listening and speaking skills. Over the next few minutes, we'll follow our heroine's journey from a rainy Edinburgh common room, Chapter 1, all the way to the sunlit fields of Provence, Chapter 10. Each chapter giving you rich, natural dialogue and vivid descriptions to boost your vocabulary, sharpen your listening, and practice speaking with confidence. Ready to light up your English journey through compelling storytelling? Let's dive in and spark your fluency together. Chapter 1. The Rainy Discovery. It was a damp, overcast afternoon in early May when Eleanor Parker hurried through the narrow streets of Edinburgh, her umbrella flipping inside out against a sudden gust of chilling wind. Each step splashed through puddles that reflected the dark stone walls of the old city, and her coat, a simple navy peacoat, did little to keep out the biting cold. In her arms she carried a stack of books, textbooks, lecture notes, and a leather-bound journal, none of which seemed very comforting on a day like this. By the time she reached the university's common room, her shoes squelched and her hair was damp, beads of water clinging to the ends. She slipped inside, closing the heavy oak door behind her, and let out a long breath. The heat inside felt almost too warm, but she welcomed it. Around her, a few students and faculty members sat at round wooden tables, sipping tea and murmuring quietly. The walls, lined with portraits of scholars long gone, seemed to watch her with silent curiosity. Eleanor made her way to her favorite corner sofa, its burgundy cushions worn soft by years of use. She set her books down and unfolded her umbrella, leaning it against the table. There, on the polished oak surface, lay a stack of local newspapers, thin sheets printed on coarse newsprint. She picked up the top one, flipped through it absent-mindedly, scanning headlines about town council meetings and the latest lectures on medieval literature. None of it held her attention for more than a moment. Then, as she turned a page, something small caught her eye. A tiny advertisement buried in the classified section. It read, "May rental, Provençal villa with sunlit courtyard, lavender fields, and olive groves. Quiet surroundings, share with up to 4 guests. Inquire for details, the High." Words seemed to glow on the page. Eleanor's heart skipped. A Provençal villa, far away from pattering raindrops and stone buildings, bathed in golden sunshine and surrounded by purple lavender. She could almost feel the warmth on her face, smell the sweet floral air, and hear the soft hum of cicadas. She closed her eyes for a moment and let herself dream. Eleanor thought back to the past few months, long lectures in drafty halls, stacks of essays to grade, and evenings spent alone in her small flat above a bakery. Her fiancé, James, was away on a research trip in Germany, and although they spoke every evening, she still felt a quiet ache of solitude. She missed the spontaneity of travel, the feeling of discovering a new place, and the simple joy of walking, barefoot on warm earth. She opened her eyes and stared at the ad again. The price, however, was daunting, far beyond what two people could afford. But the idea of sharing the villa with others stirred a thought. If she could find the right companions, people who also needed a break, then the cost could be divided. Suddenly, her mind raced with possibility. Eleanor folded the newspaper carefully and placed it in her journal. She reached for her pen and wrote across the top of the page in neat, decisive letters, Villa in Provence, May. Below, she listed questions: how to find fellow travelers, who to trust, how to arrange the rental. Each question felt like a small spark, igniting her imagination. Just then, Margaret Hayes, her colleague from the history department, entered the room. Margaret was tall and quiet, with dark hair pulled back into a braid and thoughtful green eyes behind round glasses. Eleanor had seen her in lectures and at staff meetings, but had never spoken to her beyond a brief greeting in the hallway. Margaret frowned at the newspapers on the table. "Good afternoon, Eleanor," she said softly, taking a seat across from her. "You look lost in thought." "I might be," Eleanor admitted, closing her journal. She tapped on the spot where she had written Villa in Provence. "I found this ad. A villa in Provence, available this May. I've been dreaming of somewhere sunny, quiet, just to escape all this rain and routine." Margaret leaned forward to read the ad. Her eyes widened slightly. "It sounds wonderful," she said, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I could use a change of scenery, too. My husband's away on business most of the month, and I've been feeling rather isolated." Eleanor's pulse quickened. Here was someone who understood. "What if we went together?" she asked. "But the cost is high for two. We'd need more guests to share." Margaret considered this, then nodded. "Share with 4, maybe even 3 other women. It could be like a retreat. No work, just sunshine, books, and good company." Eleanor smiled, warmth spreading through her chest despite the chill outside. Yes, a short break to feel alive again. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, imagining themselves walking among lavender fields, sipping iced tea on the villa's stone terrace and hearing nothing but the breeze through olive trees. The common room's hum of conversation faded far away. Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "Let's draft a short notice," she said, tapping the screen. We can post it on the campus bulletin and maybe share it with friends. Something like, seeking 2 women to share a Provençal villa in May. Peaceful retreat, small group, friendly company. What do you think? Margaret smiled, her eyes bright. Perfect. Let's do it right now, before this idea slips away. As they wrote the notice together, careful to keep it simple and clear, the rain outside began to let up. Pale sunlight filtered through the tall windows, and the common room felt suddenly alive with possibility. Eleanor realized that this small ad had become more than a fleeting dream. It was a doorway to something new. By the time they finished, the sky had lightened, and Eleanor felt a surge of hope. She gathered her books, folded the notice, and slipped it into an envelope. Together, she and Margaret stood, ready to place their ad on the bulletin board outside the common room door. Eleanor paused for a moment, looking back at the cozy space where her adventure had begun. In just a few minutes, a simple newspaper clipping had set her heart on a new path, one that might lead far beyond rainy Edinburgh, all the way to sunlit fields in southern France. And with that, she stepped back into the corridor, envelope in hand, ready to turn her rainy discovery into a real journey. Chapter 2: Kindred Spirits. It was early the next morning when Eleanor found herself back in the common room, this time armed with 2 steaming mugs of cinnamon tea and a hopeful smile. The rain had finally stopped, leaving droplets on the ancient window panes that caught the pale dawn light. Margaret Hayes arrived shortly after, her braid swinging over her shoulder as she carried a leather satchel stuffed with notes and journal pages. They settled into the same corner sofa where Eleanor had discovered the Provençal villa adjust a day before. Now, that tiny notice felt like the first seed of something wonderful. Eleanor placed one of the mugs on the low wooden table between them and wrapped her hands around the warm porcelain. "I've been thinking," Margaret said, her green eyes steady and bright. "Last night I looked up Provence, its towns, its cuisine, even its festivals. It seems like a different world from Edinburgh." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a notebook. "I made some notes. I'm sharing rooms in a villa with strangers, yes, but they might become friends. What do you think?" Eleanor nodded, excitement bubbling in her chest. "Exactly. I don't just want sun and lavender fields. I want company, people who are also looking for something new. I've been feeling stuck, grading essays on Chaucer, answering students' questions about syntax. All of it feels a bit gray lately." Margaret glanced down at her own hands. "I understand. My husband is traveling in Canada this month for academic conferences. The house is so quiet when he's gone. I spend evenings in front of an empty fireplace, reading journals on 18th century art. I love my Work, but solitude can become its own kind of loneliness. She sighed softly. When you mentioned the villa, something inside me lit up. Eleanor's smile grew. We both need a change of scene. She tilted her mug in a small toast. To change, Margaret returned the toast earnestly. To change. She set her cup down and flipped open her notebook. Now, about finding 2 more women. We need people who want quiet, who aren't looking for parties or loud music. Eleanor leaned forward. Yes, I picture evenings on stone, terraces, listening to crickets instead of traffic, breakfast of fresh bread and honey, long walks among olive trees. We need someone who dreams of that too. Margaret scribbled as Eleanor spoke, then looked up. What about personality? Should we limit replies to older women, younger women, or a mix? Eleanor considered. I don't mind age. If someone is lonely, they'll understand. If they're younger, they might bring energy. If they're older, they might bring calm. Let's just say 2 women who enjoy peace and nature. That way, it's clear we're not planning a party. Margaret nodded and wrote that phrase at the top of a clean page. Seeking 2 women who enjoy peace and nature to share a Provençal villa in May. Beneath it, she jotted details. Dates, May 31, rent split 4 ways, simple accommodations, bring your own reading material, no pets, no children. Eleanor added quietly, and perhaps mention light housekeeping, so everyone knows. We'll take turns cleaning. She tapped her pen. It's only fair. Margaret smiled. Agreed. She looked around the room. Do you think we should meet in person with any applicants before committing? Eleanor sipped her tea, enjoying the warm cinnamon notes. Yes. If someone seems right, we can arrange a coffee at the university cafe. That way we can feel comfortable before sending any money or signing agreements. She set her mug down firmly. Safety first. Margaret laughed softly. Imagine booking a villa in France with complete strangers and heading off without meeting them. It happens, Eleanor said with a grin. But let's not be naive. We'll do due diligence. They paused as a shaft of sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the table and sparkling on the window droplets. The common room felt suddenly bright, not just because of the light, but because of their shared excitement. Margaret closed her notebook and tucked it into her satchel. Let's draft the final notice now and then post it on the campus bulletin board and the online faculty forum. We can open replies for 1 week, then meet anyone who seems right. Eleanor opened her laptop and began typing in a clear, simple font. May retreat. 2 women seek 2 companions to share a peaceful Provençal villa. Enjoy sunlit courtyard, lavender fields, and olive groves. Dates, May 1 to 31. Rent split 4 ways. Light housekeeping. Ideal for readers, writers, and those seeking calm. Reply to ellie.parkeruni.ac.uk by April 5th. Margaret read over the draft and nodded. Perfect. Short and sweet. Eleanor saved the file and printed 2 copies. She handed one to Margaret. I'll post this in the common room and on the history department notice board. Could you email it to the literature and art departments? Margaret took the page. On it. She stood up, determined. I'll send the email before lunch. Eleanor gathered her books and slipped the printed notice into an envelope. What about travel arrangements? She asked. If we find the right women, we'll need to agree on tickets and schedules. Margaret straightened her shoulders. One step at a time. First, find the group. Then we plan travel. We'll figure it out together. They shared another smile, one full of confidence and hope. 2 colleagues, one a literature lecturer, the other a history scholar, were now accomplices in a grand plan. A month-long escape to southern France, divided among 4 dreamers. As they left the common room side by side, Eleanor felt a lightness in her step. The heavy gray sky of Edinburgh no longer seemed oppressive. It was merely the beginning of a journey. Margaret walked beside her, umbrella in hand, ready to face whatever replies the notice might bring. That afternoon, they pinned their bright notice to the wooden board by the main entrance. Students and faculty passed by, pausing to read the paper. A few smiled and nodded. 1 or 2 made notes. For Eleanor and Margaret, each glance at their announcement was a small flicker of possibility. Proof that their shared dream was already taking shape. And so, with tea mugs emptied and plans drawn in ink, their kindred spirits set the wheels of adventure turning. In a few short weeks, if luck was on their side, rain-weary travelers would step onto sun-drenched terraces, breathe in lavender-scented air, and discover that friendship and sunshine can heal even the coldest days. Chapter 3. Seeking Companions. I woke early on a clear spring morning and checked my inbox before even brewing coffee. Overnight, a small stack of replies to our villa notice had arrived. My heart thudded as I scanned the subject lines. May retreat from tessa.o'malleywriters.net. Inquiry about Provence Villa. From anya.fisherartworld.org. Margaret and I had agreed to limit our search to 2 responses. These were the first ones, so they qualified for an in-person meeting. I poured a cup of strong coffee and settled at my desk. The soft sunlight filtering through my study window felt like a gentle nudge. Time to choose carefully. I opened Tess. O'Malley's email first. Dear Eleanor and Margaret, I came across your notice and felt an immediate sense of longing. I'm a poet and teacher, recently recovering from a long writer's block. The idea of lavender fields and quiet mornings speaks to my soul. I would be honored to join you in Provence this May. Sincerely, Tess. Her words were simple, honest. She sounded warm and thoughtful, exactly the sort of person who would treasure peaceful days. I made a note beside her name. Meets vibe. Creative. Gentle, serious about retreat. Next, I opened Anya Fisher's message. Hello, Eleanor and Margaret. Your villa retreat sounds delightful. I'm Anya Fisher, retired museum curator. After 50 years surrounded by crowds of tourists and valuable art, I crave a month of simplicity. I love nature walks and sketching olive trees. Please let me know if I fit your group. Best, Anya. Anya sounded calm, experienced, and practical. Her background as a curator promised patience and respect for beauty. I jotted, meets vibe, orderly, nature lover, enjoys sketching. My pulse quickened. We had two candidates who aligned perfectly with our hopes. Tess, the poet in need of inspiration, and Anya, the curator longing for quiet. If I replied quickly, we could all meet before the April deadline. I drafted replies immediately. Dear Tess, thank you for your kind note. Margaret and I would love to meet you for a coffee at the campus cafe this Thursday at 3 p.m. to talk more about our plans and ensure we're all comfortable. Does that time suit you? Warmly, Eleanor. And for Anya. Hello, Anya. Your message brightened our morning. We'd be delighted to meet at the campus cafe this Thursday at 4 p.m. Would that work for you? We can discuss dates, costs, and the daily routine together. Best regards, Eleanor. I sent both emails and felt a light flutter of anticipation. Within minutes, confirmations pinged back. Tess could make 3 p.m., Anya could do 4 p.m. Perfect. Thursday. Arrived with a soft breeze and sunshine that promised spring was fully here. I walked to the campus cafe early to stake out a table by the window. I laid out the printed villa notice, a notebook, and 2 pens, one green, one blue, to capture distinct impressions of each guest. At 3 p.m., Tess walked in. She was slender, with curly brown hair tucked behind her ears, carrying a worn leather satchel. She spotted me and smiled brightly, as if she'd found exactly what she'd been searching for. Eleanor? She asked, her voice gentle but clear. I nodded and rose to greet her. Hi, Tess. Thanks for coming. We sat, and she immediately ordered chamomile tea. I offered her a printed copy of our notice. She studied it and nodded thoughtfully. It's exactly as I imagined. I love the idea of taking turns to cook simple meals, then spending afternoons writing in the garden. Her eyes lit up at the mention of olive groves. I've been looking for a place where inspiration comes from silence itself, I jotted notes. Tess cares about writing time, simple meals, quiet inspiration. We spent 20 minutes talking through the daily schedule. Breakfast at sunrise, afternoon free for writing or walking, shared dinners, and light chores. Tess agreed enthusiastically. I felt certain she'd blend well with our vision. At 4 p.m., Anya arrived. She was a graceful woman in her 60s, with silver hair braided loosely down her back. She carried a small sketchbook and wore comfortable flat shoes, practical for long walks. "Hello, Eleanor," she greeted, and I introduced Margaret, who had just arrived to join us. Anya ordered a black coffee and pulled out her sketchbook, showing us a delicate pencil drawing of an olive branch. "I drew this last summer," she said. "It reminded me of Provence when I saw it in a travel article. I can't wait to walk among real trees and fill my sketchbook." Her tone was calm, sincere. Margaret passed around a list of chores and daily routines, and Anya nodded approvingly at every point. "I'm happy to contribute however needed," she said, and her willingness relieved any concerns about uneven work sharing. By 4:45 p.m., both meetings had gone exactly as we'd hoped. Tess's enthusiasm for writing hours and respect for silence, paired with Anya's love of nature and steady reliability, formed the right balance. Margaret and I exchanged looks. We had our 4 travelers. That evening, Margaret and I met again in her office to finalize our decision. We reviewed our notes, Eleanor and Margaret, hosts and organizers, Tess, poet, needs writing time, loves quiet inspiration, Anya, curator, nature sketcher, practical and dependable. We agreed to welcome them both. I drafted a group email. "Dear Tess and Anya, we're delighted to invite you both to join us at Villa Soleil in Provence from May 1 to 31. Attached is a draft agreement outlining costs, daily routines, and contact details. If you agree, please reply by Friday, and we'll arrange payment steps. We look forward to sharing lavender fields and peaceful mornings together. Warm wishes, Eleanor and Margaret." With the email sent, a wave of relief and excitement washed over me. Our group was complete. 4 women, each seeking a quiet month to restore their hearts and minds, bound together by a tiny notice in an Edinburgh common room. As I closed my laptop, I imagined us all stepping off a small train in southern France, luggage in hand, eyes wide at the sunlit courtyard awaiting us. The real adventure was about to begin, and it felt as promising as the violet blossoms of Provence themselves. Chapter 4. Farewells and Fair Tickets. I woke before dawn on May 1st, heart fluttering like the wings of a bird ready to take flight. The sky outside my window was still dark, but inside my small flat in Edinburgh, Everything felt bright with anticipation. I dressed quickly in comfortable layers, a soft gray sweater, dark jeans, and sturdy boots for the journey ahead. On the kitchen table lay 2 plain white envelopes, one addressed to James, my fiancé, and the other to Margaret's husband. Inside each, we had written a brief note. "I'm away for a writing workshop. I'll call when I arrive." No more explanation than that, just enough to keep worried spouses at ease without revealing my full plan. I packed my suitcase with care. First, I placed my journal, the one with the leather cover and small lock at the very top. Then came a stack of lightweight dresses, a pair of linen trousers, and a simple shawl for cool evenings. I tucked in 2 favorite novels, one by Jane Austen and another collection of modern poems, alongside my sketch pad and a pencil case. Next, I added toiletries in a small canvas pouch, toothbrush, soap, sunscreen, and a travel-sized shampoo. Finally, I slipped in a small camera to capture moments of lavender fields and stone courtyards. I resisted the urge to overpack. I knew I would buy fresh bread and cheese each morning rather than carry heavy snacks. I paused, zipped the suitcase, and took a deep breath. This was real. I tucked the envelopes under my arm, grabbed my coat, and waved goodbye to the empty flat. On the landing, I pressed the call button for Margaret's door. When she opened, her suitcase was already by the door, evidence that her own packing had mirrored mine in both excitement and precision. "Ready?" I asked, and she smiled, her green eyes bright in the hallway light. "Ready," she replied, handing me a thermos of strong black coffee. "For the train station." We hailed a taxi that whisked us down cobbled streets toward Waverley Station. As the car passed the castle, its towers shadowed in early mist, I felt a swell of emotion. Leaving home behind, even temporarily, always brought both sadness and hope. At the station, the vast iron and glass roof arched overhead, and the platform buzzed with travelers pulling wheeled cases and clutching coffee cups. Our tickets were already printed. First-class seats on the 8:15 express to London King's Cross. From there, we would change at St. Pancras for the Eurostar to Paris, then a regional TGV to Marseille, and finally a local coach to the village near our villa. The journey would span almost an entire day, but each leg promised a new view: rolling hills, sparkling rivers, and eventually golden fields of Provence. At the ticket barrier, I slipped my card through the scanner and led Margaret onto the platform. We found our carriage easily. It was quiet, almost empty. The seats arranged around small wooden tables. I settled into my window seat, peering out as the train pulled away. Edinburgh receded quickly, gray rooftops and narrow lanes giving way to open fields and distant hills. We sipped our coffee as the countryside unfurled, the sky lightening into pale blue. Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out a sandwich she had made. Soft cheese and cucumber on brown bread. I offered half of mine, egg salad with a sprinkle of paprika, and we ate in companionable silence. As we neared London, the landscape changed. Green fields turned into suburbs, then into blocks of brick and stone. Finally, steel towers of the city loomed ahead. At King's Cross, we disembarked and followed signs to St. Pancras, our footsteps echoing through glass corridors. We passed shops selling pastries and newspapers, pausing only to refill water bottles at a drinking fountain. At St. Pancras, excitement buzzed in the air around the Eurostar gates. Travelers in every language queued to cross the border. We cleared security smoothly and found our seats aboard the sleek train bound for Paris. Before the departure whistle, I sent a quick text to Tess and Anya. On our way. See you soon in Marseille. A few taps later, both replied with enthusiastic emojis, flowers, books, and olive branches, tiny promises of the adventure ahead. The Eurostar whisked us beneath the English Channel in just over 30 minutes. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling that strange thrill of underground speed. When we emerged, the train slowed into the Grand Marble station at Gare du Nord. We followed signs for sortie and correspondances, weaving through crowds, until we spotted the platform for Marseille TGV. The departure board showed an hour's wait, time enough for a quick snack of fresh croissants and coffee at a corner cafe. Back on board, the TGV began its high-speed journey across France. Fields of grain and vineyard rows blurred past in shades of gold and green. Villages dotted the landscape, stone houses clustered around church steeples. I imagined Tess and Anya waiting at Marseille with smiles and open arms. When the train slowed into St. Charles Station in Marseille, the Mediterranean breeze greeted us immediately, warm, salty, and new. We retrieved our luggage from the overhead rack and stepped into the sunlit concourse. After a brief wait at a nearby kiosk, we climbed into a small coach bound for our final stop, the village that nestled at the foot of the hill where Villa Soleil awaited. The coach wound its way along narrow roads, past olive groves and fields of lavender that stretched to the horizon. Each purple stripe seemed to dance in the breeze. Margins of wild poppies added bright red accents. I pressed my camera to my eye and clicked, trying to capture the moment, though nothing on film could match the real thing. At last, the coach rounded a bend, and the villa's honey-colored walls came into view, draped in wisteria and glowing in the late afternoon light. My suitcase tumbled from the luggage rack as I braced myself. I stepped down onto gravel, heart pounding. Margaret was already there, her eyes alight with wonder. "Welcome to Villa Soleil," I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. In that instant, every goodbye and every ticket printed felt worth it. We had left rainy Edinburgh far behind, and the true chapter of our adventure was just beginning. Chapter 5. Arrival at Villa Soleil. We stepped off the coach onto the gravel courtyard just as the late afternoon sun gilded the villa's honeystone walls. A dry breeze carried the scent of lavender and olive leaf, and for a moment, none of us spoke. We simply stood, suitcases at our feet, drinking in the golden light. The courtyard was framed by low arches draped in wisteria, its mauve clusters tumbling over rough-hewn pillars. To our left, a stone fountain burbled quietly, water spilling into a shallow basin ringed by creeping thyme. The villa's windows glowed from within, promising warmth after our long journey. "Welcome," called a soft voice. We turned to see an elderly man, Monsieur Laurent, the caretaker, leaning on a carved wooden cane. His crisp white shirt and tan trousers looked as if they belonged to another age. He shuffled forward, a kindly smile creasing his weathered face. "I am Laurent." "You must be Mrs. Parker and Mrs. Hayes?" He bowed slightly, offering each of us a small bronze key. "Please call me Laurent. Your rooms are ready, but first, refreshments in the garden." Margaret and I exchanged a glance. This we had dreamed of, and followed him through an open archway into a courtyard garden. There, as if conjured by magic, a small table was set. A woolen throw over a stone bench, a pitcher of iced jasmine tea, and a plate piled with ripe figs and buttery croissants. I poured myself a tall glass of tea and let the cool sweetness spread through me. Margaret tucked a croissant into her mouth and closed her eyes, the corners of her lips lifting in a slow smile. All around us, lavender spikes swayed gently, their purple tips nodding toward a row of olive trees beyond. "This place is like a living painting," I said, brushing a stray tendril of hair from my face. Laurent nodded. "Villa Soleil has welcomed travelers for centuries," he said. "Many arrive weary, many leave transformed." He tapped his heart. "This place works quietly." We finished our tea and followed Laurent back through the arch. "Your rooms are upstairs," he said, leading us along a flagstone path. As we climbed the wide stone staircase, I could see beneath each low window a bench in its own little alcove, perfect for reading or sketching. My room had pale yellow walls with rough plaster that caught the light, a wrought iron bed draped in white linen, and a pair of French doors opening onto a small balcony. I unpacked slowly, journal and pencil on the desk. books stacked on the nightstand, dresses hung in the built-in armoire. Margaret's room, next door, was nearly identical, but with a faint lavender sachet tucked behind the door. A welcome touch. From Laurent. Once we'd settled, we stepped onto the balcony together. Below, the courtyard stretched toward a distant terrace shaded by grapevines. Beyond that, fields of lavender blurred into silver-green olives, and at the horizon, the pale blue curve of the Mediterranean Sea. "Do you see that?" Margaret whispered, reaching for my hand. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." I nodded, feeling a soft ache settle in my chest, a mix of awe and relief. We breathed in the warm air, watching the sky shift from gold to rosy pink as the sun dipped low. Soft clop of hooves drew our attention. Down below, Laurent appeared again, leading 2 white mules carrying wicker baskets. He smiled up at us. "These will bring your luggage to your rooms in a moment," he said. "Soon we will have your other guests." I leaned forward. "They arrive today?" "In an hour," he replied. "Tess by taxi from the train station, and Anya by the coach from Marseille. I will bring them here." We said nothing, but our hearts quickened. We had dreamed of 4 friends sharing this sanctuary, and now it was almost complete. True to his word, Laurent reappeared shortly, leading first Tess and then Anya across the courtyard. Tess's curly hair was loose around her shoulders, and she carried a small satchel. Anya's silver braid caught the dusk light as she stepped lightly beside her travel bag. They both paused in the courtyard, their eyes taking in the villa with the same mixture of wonder and shyness that Margaret and I had shown just minutes before. "Tess, Anya, welcome to Villa Soleil," I called, stepping down the stairs to buy. "Meet them." Margaret joined, and we formed a little circle, suitcases and satchels at our feet. Tess's eyes filled with tears of happiness. "I can't believe we're really here," she said, her voice soft. Anya offered a graceful nod. "It's quieter than I ever imagined." I took Tess's hand, then Anya's. "This is our home for the next month," I said. "Olive groves, lavender fields, and, most important of all, time to rest, create, and find peace." Margaret smiled, brushing a stray wisp of hair behind her ear. "We'll share meals, morning walks, and evenings under the stars. And we'll take turns cooking. It will be simple. Fresh bread, local cheese, fruit from the market." Tess laughed, the sound bright, and perhaps for the first time in months, free. Anya reached into her bag and brought out her sketchbook, opening it to a blank page. "May I draw a scene right now?" she asked. "Please," I said, and guided her to a low bench beside the wisteria. As she sketched, We watched the sky deepen. From pink to lavender, the villa's stone walls softening in the growing dusk. When she set down her pencil, we all had settled onto the steps. Tess with her satchel, Margaret with her shawl, Anya with her sketchbook, and me leaning against the warm stone. Above us, the first stars appeared, tiny pinpricks of promise. In that moment, 4 women, united by a tiny ad and a shared dream, we felt the first true sigh of relief. Villa Soleil had opened its doors, and we had stepped inside. The real journey, the one of friendship and renewal, was about to begin. And as the breeze carried the scent of lavender and jasmine through the courtyard, we knew we were exactly where we were meant to be. Chapter 6. First Morning's Light. I woke to a soft glow of pink light spilling through the curtains. For a moment, I lay very still, listening to the quiet. No traffic, no distant voices, only the gentle rustle of leaves outside my window. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Margaret, who slept in the room next door. My bare feet touched the cool stone floor, and I walked across to the French doors. I pushed them open, and the warm air greeted me like a gentle hug. Before me stretched the garden, bathed in dawn's first light. Lavender rose looked silvery in the soft glow. Olive trees stood like silent sentinels, their silken leaves whispering secrets to the breeze. Beyond them, I could just make out the pale blue ribbon of the Mediterranean Sea. I breathed in deeply. The air was fresh, scented faintly with jasmine and herbs. It felt different from anything I had ever known. No city smoke, no damp chill, just pure morning stillness. I found Margaret already on the terrace, seated at a small wooden table. She had a steaming mug of tea in her hands and was staring across the fields as though she were seeing them for the very first time. Her braid hung over her shoulder, and she wore a simple linen dress that rippled in the breeze. "Good morning," I whispered. She glanced up, smiling. "Good morning, Eleanor. Isn't it beautiful?" "Absolutely," I said, settling into the chair opposite her. I accepted the second mug of tea she offered. It was chamomile, light and scented with honey. The warmth spread through me, brightening my bones. We sat together in companionable silence for a while, watching the sun lift itself slowly above the distant hills. The sky turned from pale pink to gold. A single bird cried out, then another, answered from the olive grove. The world seemed to awaken in gentle conversation. Eventually, the other two, Tess and Anya, appeared. Tess came first, her hair still damp from a quick wash. She carried a small notebook and a fountain pen. She paused beside the table, closed her eyes, and drew in a deep breath of lavender-scented air. "Good morning," she said softly. This feels like the beginning of a poem. I smiled. Why don't you sit and write it as we have breakfast? Tess nodded and took the empty chair. A moment later, Anya emerged, cradling her sketchbook against her chest. She had already sketched the courtyard from her balcony, delicate lines capturing the curve of the fountain and the climbing wisteria. Good morning, everyone, Anya said. She placed the sketchbook on the table so we could admire it. I tried to catch the light before it changed. Her drawing was lovely, simple, honest, and full of feeling. We all leaned in to look. Margaret reached across and touched Anya's pencil strokes. This is perfect, she whispered. Our breakfast was laid out on a linen cloth, freshly baked baguette, local goat cheese, figs picked just yesterday, olives from nearby groves, and small pots of honey and apricot jam. A crystal pitcher held fresh orange juice, and another held cold water with sprigs of mint. Margaret tore the bread into pieces and passed them around. I spread cheese on mine and drizzled honey over the top. Tess wrote a few lines in her notebook about sunlight and freedom. Anya uncapped a fine charcoal pencil and began to sketch the breakfast spread, the curve of the glass pitcher, the smooth stone bowl holding figs. We ate slowly, savoring each flavor and texture. Even the simple act of breaking bread together felt special here. No one checked their phone or glanced at a watch. Time seemed to stretch and pause, allowing us to be fully present. After breakfast, we decided to take our first walk together. I led the way along a narrow stone path that wound through lavender fields as far as the eye could see. The purple tips brushed against our hands as we passed. Bees hummed busily, gathering pollen. I told the others to move gently so as not to startle them. At the edge of the field, we reached a low wooden gate that opened onto a path shaded by olive trees. We stepped through and found ourselves on a hillside, with the villa now a honey-colored dot far behind us. In front of us, terraced vineyards climbed toward the sun, and beyond them lay hills that curved down to the sea. We stopped and looked out together. Tess closed her eyes, arms outstretched, as if she wanted to hold the entire view in her embrace. Anya sketched the horizon, careful to capture the way the hills met the sky. Margaret simply stood, hands clasped behind her back, breathing in the peace. I pulled out my journal and wrote a few lines about morning light and new beginnings. My pen felt eager, as though it had been waiting for this moment. I wrote about the lavender breeze, the way the sun felt warm on my cheeks, and the ripple of soft laughter when Tess read her poem aloud. Here we stand, 4 strangers made sisters, by dawn's soft glow and lavender whispers. When we finished our walk, we returned to the villa to freshen up. I stepped into the cool bathroom, splashed my face with water, and brushed my hair. Each movement felt lighter, freer. Back on the terrace, Margaret had arranged 4 folding chairs around a small table where a new pot of tea and fresh pastries awaited us. As we sipped our second breakfast, I realized how different I already felt. The exhaustion I carried from London, long meetings, grading papers, the weight of routine, had begun to dissolve. In its place was a quiet joy, a sense of possibility. We talked about plans for the day, a trip to the nearby market in the village, gathering fresh produce, a reading session under the pergola, and later, a group sketch or writing circle by the fountain. Each idea felt like a promise. By the time the sun climbed higher, we were ready to step into our new routine. We pushed back our chairs, brushed lavender dust from our clothes, and climbed the steps to the villa's main door. As I passed through that threshold, leaving my old life for now behind, I felt a deep gratitude. This first morning's light had given us more than warmth. It had brought us together, set our hearts to rest, and opened a space for creativity and renewal. And I knew that, in the days ahead, each sunrise would be a gift waiting to be unwrapped. Chapter 7. Secrets unfold. I woke late that morning, later than I ever would at home. But when I opened my eyes, the villa was already alive with gentle activity. Through the open window, I heard Tess softly reading from her poem, and beyond, that the low hum of bees in the lavender. I slipped on a light wrap and padded into the hall where the others had gathered to plan the day. Margaret stood by the armoire, holding her journal. "Shall we meet in the garden after lunch?" she asked. "We could share a story or two, just among us." Anya nodded, folding her sketchbook closed. "A good idea. This place has given us space to think. Perhaps it can hold our truths too." Tess looked hesitant, but then smiled. "Yes, I've been carrying a weight. It feels safe here." I led the way downstairs into the garden, where a linen-draped table waited beneath the wisteria. The late morning sun dappled the stone path with moving shadows. I poured each of us a glass of lemonade scented with mint, and we carried our drinks to the table. Once we were seated, I spoke first, my voice surprisingly steady. "I want to tell you why I came. I love teaching, but after my last relationship ended, I felt adrift, like I'd lost part of myself. This trip, I hoped I might find that part again." I paused and took a sip of lemonade, feeling the cool sweetness calm my nerves. "Thank you for listening." Margaret leaned forward. "I'm next." She closed her journal. "My husband and I have been distant for years. His work takes him away, and I buried myself in academia. When I saw that ad, I realized I'd forgotten. what it felt like to be curious about the world, about myself. I need to remember. Tess's gaze was downcast at first. She toyed with the rim of her glass. I've been a writer for 10 years, she said. But last year, a friend I loved died suddenly. I stopped writing. Every time I tried, the words felt empty. I came here hoping silence and beauty might fill me again. Anya watched Tess with soft eyes. When it was her turn, she inhaled slowly. I was a museum curator, she began. I organized exhibitions, met artists, traveled the world. But after I retired, I realized I never took time for myself. My days became lonely. I'm here to learn how to simply be, without schedules or crowds. The air was still, as if even the bees paused to listen. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Tears, not of sadness, but of relief. Here in this sunlit garden, we were no longer strangers skulking behind polite smiles. We were 4 women who had carried burdens too long, now setting them down together. Margaret closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you all for trusting me." Tess reached across and laid her hand on Margaret's. Anya did the same, and soon, our fingers were linked in a quiet circle. The vines above rustled, and a single wisteria blossom drifted down to rest on the tablecloth. After a moment, I asked, "Shall we do something to seal this moment? A small ritual, maybe?" Tess's eyes brightened. "Yes, a promise. Let's each say one thing we will do for ourselves before we leave." I went first. "I promise to write every morning, at least a page, no matter what comes." Margaret nodded. "I promise to pause every afternoon and just walk without purpose. No books, no lists." Tess took a breath. "I promise to read aloud one poem each day to reclaim my voice." Anya's gaze settled on the lavender rose beyond. "I promise to sit under an olive tree each evening and sketch whatever I see. No judgment, just observation." We repeated each promise softly, voices blending with the wind. Then we sealed our vows by dipping fingertips in a small bowl of rose water at the center of the table and touching our hearts. The scent of rose and mint lingered on our skin. For a while, none of us spoke. We simply sat in that circle of light, feeling something shift inside us, a gentle opening of the heart. Eventually, Tess reached for her book bag and pulled out a thin volume of poetry. "I'd like to read something now," she said. Her voice was firmer than before as she stood and turned to face the olive grove. We all rose and followed her gaze. Tess read a short poem about dawn and healing, her words trembling with emotion, at first, then growing stronger. When she finished, the late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, spotlighting her as if the trees themselves offered applause. We stayed there, in the shade of the olive trees for several quiet minutes. No need for applause, no need for words. The poem had said enough. Later, we wandered back to the villa for tea and scones, but nothing felt quite the same. Our laughter carried an undercurrent of shared knowing. The villa had indeed become more than a place. It was now a haven where secrets could unfold safely. That night, as I lay in my bed listening to the soft night breeze, I realized how far we had come. In just one afternoon, 4 strangers had become companions bound by trust and hope. The lavender-scented air carried a promise that by the end of this stay we would emerge renewed, ready to face the world again. And with that gentle thought, I closed my eyes and let sleep enfold me, dreaming of dawn's first light and the secrets we had shared beneath the wisteria. Chapter 8. A Surprise Guest. Late one afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the lavender rose glowed purple gold, we heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Anya was sketching under the wisteria. Tess had just finished reading aloud a new poem, Margaret, and I stood by the fountain, marveling at the way the water caught the fading light. We exchanged curious glances. No coach or taxi would arrive at this hour, yet someone was coming. Through the arched courtyard gate rolled a small wooden cart, drawn by a single bay horse. Behind it walked a young man, tall and lean, dressed in a crisp linen shirt rolled to the elbows and trousers the color of wheat. Strapped across his back was a wicker basket, brimming with freshly picked figs and herbs. His dark hair curled just above his collar, and his eyes held a gentle warmth as he approached. "Good evening," he called, voice calm and welcoming. He smiled as he paused beside the fountain. Up close, we saw a light dusting of stubble on his jaw and strong, tanned hands from long days outdoors. "I am Julian Moreau," he said, setting down the basket. "I own Villa Soleil, and I wanted to welcome you myself." I stepped forward. "Eleanor Parker," I said, offering my hand. "And this is Margaret Hayes, Tess O'Malley, and Anya Fisher." Each of us introduced ourselves in turn, a little breathless with surprise. Julian nodded politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you all. I hope your stay has been peaceful." He lifted the lid off the basket. Ripe figs the color of dusk, sprigs of rosemary, and a bundle of lavender. "These are from my family's orchard. Please, help yourselves." He invited us to gather around as he set the basket on the fountain's edge. Tess, always drawn to poetry, ran her fingers over a fig's smooth skin. "They're exquisite," she said, breaking one in half. The sticky flesh glistened in the sun. She tasted it and closed her eyes. "Sweet as sunbeams." Margaret selected a sprig of rosemary and inhaled deeply. And this, my grandmother, used to grow it in her garden. Anya unfurled a lavender stem thoughtfully. You grow this here? She sketched it quickly in the margin of her notebook, capturing the slender bloom. Julian watched us with a small smile. I'm glad you like them. I tend the orchards myself, when I'm not working in the vineyards. He paused, as though deciding whether to say more. Then he gestured toward the villa's eastern wing. I thought you might enjoy a brief tour. Some rooms have been updated since your arrival, and I'd like your thoughts. We exchanged looks. None of us had expected the owner, much less a tour. But as Margaret said, we'd be honored. Tess and Anya nodded, and I stepped forward to lead the way. Julian opened a wooden door with ornate iron hinges. Inside, pale yellow walls brightened with new sconces, and a narrow hallway led to a small salon filled with woven chairs and a fireplace carved from local stone. A fresh bouquet of rosemary and lavender sat on a side table. We replaced the oil lamp fittings with electric lights, Julian explained, flicking a switch so the room glowed softly. It keeps the rustic feel while providing more evening brightness. Tess ran her hand along the mantel. It's perfect, she said. Warm and inviting. Anya circled the chairs, her sketchbook open. May I draw this room later? She asked. Julian nodded. This was once my grandmother's sewing room, he said. I thought you might like the intimacy of a smaller gathering space. We moved on to a second bedroom. Cool plaster walls tinted pale olive, windows framing vineyard views, and a carved wooden desk. On it lay an open journal, its pages blank except for a single line. May this place inspire your best work. I picked up the journal. Who wrote this? I asked. Julian's eyes softened. A friend of the villa's, an artist who stayed last year. She wanted to leave a message for future guests. He closed the journal gently. Perhaps you will add your own words before you leave. Margaret smiled. That would be wonderful. We followed Julian back into the courtyard, where lanterns hung from wrought iron hooks, ready to be lit later. A soft breeze rustled the eye. Lavender and the sky had deepened to violet. Thank you for showing us, I said, turning to Julian. It means a lot. He inclined his head. My pleasure. I take pride in this place. I want you to feel at home. Then, almost shyly, he added, if you need anything, fresh bread, extra linens, a guide for the olive groves, just ask. Tess set down her half-eaten fig and grinned. We'll hold you to that. Anya tucked her sketchbook under her arm. And maybe you could join us for dinner one night? Julian's face brightened. I would like that very much. As he turned to leave, he paused and touched the handle of the lantern above the fountain. I'll light these in an hour. Please feel free to wander and enjoy the garden by lamplight. We watched him walk back to his cart, the horse stamping gently, until he was out of sight around the villa corner. The courtyard felt charged with his quiet energy, an unspoken promise that Villa Soleil's care extended beyond its walls. Tess broke the silence. He's unexpectedly kind, Margaret nodded, and thoughtful. It's clear he cherishes this place. Anya raised her lavender stem to her nose. I'm glad we met him early. It makes the villa feel truly ours, not just a rental. Leaned back, closing my eyes to savor the moment. The final slant of sunlight, the murmur of the fountain, and the knowledge that we had become part of something special. A surprise guest had arrived, and with him, a deeper welcome into this hidden corner of Provence. That evening, as lanterns flickered to life and the courtyard glowed like a dream, we gathered for our first dinner under the stars. In the golden light, we raised our glasses to Julian, our unexpected host, and to the gentle unfolding of surprises that Villa Soleil would surely hold. Chapter 9. Quiet Connections. I slipped quietly from the villa just after dusk, lantern in hand, and found Julian waiting at the far edge of the courtyard. His horse-drawn cart was stabled nearby, and he offered me a small lantern of my own. I thought you might like a walk through the vineyards, he said softly. The sky was deepening to indigo, and the first stars had begun to appear above the rolling hills. I followed him down the stone path, the lantern's glow illuminating our footsteps. Lavender rows dipped their silvery heads on either side. Beyond them, neat terraces of grapevines climbed the hillside. A warm breeze carried the faint perfume of jasmine, rosemary, and crushed grass. After a few minutes, we reached a low wooden gate. Julian lifted it gently, and we passed through into the vineyards. The earth crunched underfoot, and in the distance we could hear the steady croak of frogs beside a hidden pond. Fireflies drifted lazily across the vines, like tiny sparks of magic. He stopped beside a twisted old vine, its gnarled trunk telling of many seasons past. This variety is Grenache, he explained. It thrives in the heat. Do you smell the fruit? In a few weeks, these grapes will be ready to harvest. I bent down, inhaling. The scent was warm, fruity, a little wild. It's wonderful. I've never smelled anything like it. Julian smiled, and for a moment his eyes caught the lantern light. I'm glad you enjoy it. He paused, as if deciding whether to speak more. Then he asked, Are you finding what you came here for? His question surprised me. So direct, so caring. I hesitated, then realized how much I trusted him. I think I am, I admitted. I came looking for peace and a little inspiration. Tonight, In this quiet vineyard, I feel both. He nodded, shifting the lantern so its glow fell between us. Peace can be hard to find at home, he said. But here, the land speaks its own language, one of patience and stillness. We walked on in silence, two lanterns swinging gently. Overhead, the sky was clear, and a quarter moon shone, pale silver. I looked up and thought of Margaret and Tess and Anya back at the villa. They must be gathering for dinner under the wisteria, their laughter drifting faintly across the courtyard. Julian led me to a flat stone overlooking a broad valley. In Tui, the moonlight, fields of lavender looked like rippling waves, and beyond them, the sea was a narrow band of shimmering light. He set down his lantern and gestured for me to sit beside him. I sank onto the cool stone, lantern warming my hand. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "I can see why you love this place." He took a slow breath. "I've spent every summer here since I was a child. It's in my blood. But I seldom share it after dark. I'm glad I trusted you enough to bring you." His words warmed me more than the lantern's glow. I realized how rare it was to feel seen and cared for without pressure or expectation. "Thank you," I said simply. "This means a great deal." We sat side by side, and in that quiet space, the vineyard felt alive with gentle sounds, a soft rustle of leaves, a distant owl's call, the low whisper of the breeze. No one spoke for several minutes. Words would have felt like noise. Eventually, Julian broke the silence. "Tell me about your writing," he said, shifting to face me. "You said you came here to find inspiration." I smiled at the memory. "Yes. Today I wrote a page in my journal by the olive grove, and Tess read a poem under the wisteria. But I haven't begun the story I dreamed of. Each morning I wake filled with ideas, but at night they feel too vast to capture." He nodded thoughtfully. "Inspiration is like a grapevine. It grows slowly. You must tend it day by day. Perhaps you don't need to write a novel in a month, just a few honest lines each morning. Let them ferment in your mind like wine in barrel." His metaphor made me laugh softly. "I like that. Slow fermentation." I closed my eyes, feeling the vineyard's pulse. "I will try that. Simple lines, day by day." "Good," he said, his voice warm. "And if you ever feel stuck, come back here. The vines have their wisdom." We sat in companionable silence again, sharing the lantern's light and the vineyard's hush. After a while, I realized how fully relaxed I felt. No questions about deadlines, no echoes of my old life tugging at my thoughts. Only this moment, the soft earth beneath me, the sky above, and the gentle presence beside me. Finally, Julian stood and offered me his hand. "Shall we return? Dinner will be ready soon. The others will be wondering where we are." I took his hand and rose, brushing off the dust of the path. We lifted our lanterns and walked back through the gate, the fragrance of lavender guiding us. As we reached the villa's courtyard, lanterns under the wisteria glowed like warm stars. Tess and Anya emerged, curious smiles on their faces, and Margaret waved from the steps. I turned to Julian. "Thank you for this moment. It was more than I imagined." He bowed his head slightly. "It was my pleasure." Then, with a final nod, he turned and slipped away into the shadows, lantern held aloft. I paused, watching him go, and realized that our brief walk had changed something between us. It wasn't a grand declaration or a whirlwind romance, just a quiet connection built on shared silence and gentle understanding. I slipped back to my friends and took my place at the table. As we shared the first course by lantern light, fresh bread, local cheese, a simple salad of tomatoes and basil, I carried that vineyard hush inside me, and I knew that in the days to come, I would return often to those rows of grapevines, seeking both inspiration and the quiet bond that had formed beneath the moonlit sky. Chapter 10. Returning Changed. I woke before dawn on our last morning at Villa Soleil, the sky still tinted with the faintest rose glow. Even knowing we would be leaving today, I felt no hurry. Through the open French doors, I could hear Margaret, stirring in her room next door, and beyond that, the faint rustle of Tess packing her satchel and Anya gently closing her sketchbook. I dressed slowly in my favorite linen dress and walked barefoot across the cool stone floor to the terrace. The air was crisp, scented with lavender and rosemary, and the first birds were stirring in the olive trees. I paused at the edge of the terrace and closed my eyes, breathing deeply, and for a moment I simply stood there, letting the memory of this place sink into my bones. When I turned, I found Margaret standing beside me, her arms wrapped around herself against the morning chill. "It's strange to think we'll be gone by noon," she said softly. I nodded. "I already miss it." We walked down the steps together toward the courtyard, where a small spread awaited us. Fresh baguette, local goat cheese, honeycomb, and bowls of figs that still glowed with ripeness. Anya and Tess joined us, each looking quietly reflective. We poured strong coffee into ceramic mugs and settled on the low stone wall that circled the fountain. "This feels like the perfect final meal," Tess murmured, breaking her bread into pieces. "No rush, just us and this morning light." Anya wiped a crumb of cheese from her chin and smiled. I'll miss sketching beneath the wisteria. She lifted her mug in a little toast. To Villa Soleil, thank you for everything. We clinked mugs and sipped. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating the courtyard in a soft golden glow. We each spoke in turn about what we would carry home with us. I promised to write every day as I vowed under the olive trees, no longer waiting for inspiration, but inviting it with each sunrise. Margaret said she would take daily walks around Edinburgh's old town, pausing to notice details she had learned to appreciate here. The way light falls on cobblestones, the scent of linden blossoms in summer. Tess spoke of her promise to read a poem aloud every day, reclaiming her voice and kindling her creative spark. Anya vowed to sketch something, anything, once each evening, capturing the changing light she had come to treasure. With those words shared, we packed our mugs and wiped crumbs from the stone. I retrieved the small leather-bound journal I had filled with notes and sketches and slipped it into my tote. Margaret tucked the lavender sachet she'd hung behind her door into her pocket. Tess wrapped her notebook in the shawl she'd worn at dawn. Anya gently closed her sketchbook, its pages now full of the villa's corners and the vineyards beyond. Tatar carried our suitcases up the stone staircase to the landing, pausing at each window to take in the view one last time. Rolling fields of lavender, olive groves silvering in the sun, and beyond, the pale curve of the Mediterranean. Then we stepped outside, luggage wheels clicking over the courtyard's gravel. Laurent, the caretaker, stood by the arched gate, holding 2 wooden doors open for us. He bowed his head and offered a small, warm smile. "Safe travels," he said, simply. We thanked him, and Tess pressed a small fig tart into his hand, our way of saying farewell. His eyes shone with gratitude as he tucked it into his coat pocket. We climbed into the waiting coach, the same one that had brought us 3 weeks ago, and waved until Laurent and the villa vanished behind the olives and lavender. Our journey home stretched ahead, coach to Marseille, TGV to Paris, Eurostar under the Channel, and finally the familiar rails to Edinburgh. On the coach, we sat together in companionable silence at first, watching the villa's silhouette recede. Then Tess opened her notebook and read aloud a new poem she had written the night before. Words about farewell and new beginnings. Margaret whispered, "It's beautiful," and wiped a tear from her cheek. At each train change, we helped one. Another with luggage, laughed over missed connections and shared small pastries bought from station cafes. Flaky pain au chocolat in Marseille, crisp croissants in Paris, and finally scones with clotted cream at King's Cross. With every new landscape, sun-drenched vineyards giving way to rolling French countryside, then London's cityscape, and at last Scotland's green hills. I felt my heart expand with gratitude and longing all at once. On the last leg of the journey, as the train curved around Arthur's Seat and rattled into Waverley Station, I felt both excitement and a pang of sadness. The station's vaulted glass roof gleamed above us, and the whistles and bustle felt oddly comforting. We stood together on the platform, 4 friends with travel-worn hats and beaming smiles. We hugged firmly, bags and promises in hand. "Keep in touch," Anya said, pressing a small sprig of lavender into Tess's hand. Tess tucked it behind her ear. Margaret slipped her arm around me. "We'll return," she whispered. "Next May, perhaps?" I nodded, holding each of them in a final embrace. "Next May," I agreed. Then we walked out into the Edinburgh sunlight, the grey stone, buildings familiar now tinged with new warmth. Our lives awaited us. Classrooms, offices, quiet homes. But we carried something more. The song of lavender-scented breezes, the hush of moonlit vineyards, the promise of daily poems and simple sketches, and above all, the knowledge that kindness and renewal could be found when we dared to step into the unknown. As I hailed a taxi toward home, I turned once to see Tess, Margaret, and Anya waving on the platform. They were smiling, changed in ways I would remember every time I sat to write, stepped outside to walk, read a poem aloud, or sketch a leaf. Villa Soleil had given us more than a holiday. It had given us ourselves back, and 4 kind-thread spirits ready to face whatever came next. And I knew, with every sunrise to come, we would remember our time under the Provençal sky, returning changed and ever grateful for that enchanted April. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.